Hi everyone, welcome to the next video. This is another one on RetroBat. So since I did the initial video on how to install, get set up and up and running, I have had a few queries, a few comments around adding specific systems. So I plan on making a couple of videos on adding those specific systems. So the first one we're going to do now is a PS3, PlayStation 3. So what I've done is just downloaded the latest version of RetroBat, installed it here. You can see, and I've got it running. No, I've got it running. So I've got it running already. So this is basically a fresh install. All I've done, downloaded the exe, installed it, and then run it up for the first time. So you'll see here, there's no games added, anything like that. It's just, basically as it comes. Like I say, there's a couple of games that comes with it out of the box, that kind of sort of freeware games. But yeah, so this is a fresh install. So PS3. Just before we start, there's a handy guide actually on the RetroBat website. Some FAQs. So we'll just quickly look at that because we're going to reference that at some point. So make sure you go to the new website, retrobat.org, and here you'll see a link for wiki. Right, FAQ. Sorry, I should have gone. Wiki's obviously handy as well, but in this case there's this FAQ of frequently asked questions, and there's one here around PS3. So how to add PS3 games. So it's all about setting it all up and then adding a playlist. So we'll come back and refer to that later on, but to get us going, what we'll do in RetroBat itself is we go to this menu here, which is kind of like where all the emulators sit. So here's all the emulators you can add. So we'll go down this big list until we find PlayStation 3. RPCS3 is the emulator used for this. When Windows, it's pretty much the main, the go-to emulator for PS3. I'm not sure, there probably are other ones, but this is kind of, this is the main one, and obviously the only one that comes with RetroBat. So you just click to launch it, and as I've shown before, it says it's not installed, so it will download and install it for you. That's the nice thing about this. You don't have to go off and find it yourself, download the right version. It does, does it all for you, and it will download it, and it will install it into the RetroBat emulators folder, which we'll see shortly. So we'll just let that download, install. Also, the first step is to set up the emulator and get some games added. So let me just resize this so you can actually see it. So this is the kind of the default interface for the emulator. So what happens when you run the emulator through this menu in RetroBat is it will start the emulator, but obviously without a game running, and that allows you to set it up, do some configuration, etc. So the first thing we need to do with the PlayStation 3 emulator is install the PS3 firmware, and this is the standard firmware you get from the PlayStation website. So there's nothing special. It's not some kind of dodgy BIOS you have to download. So you literally go to the PlayStation website. So you see here how to update your PS3 console, PS3 system software. Somewhere down here is the link. So update using internet updates my computer. Download the PS3 update file. So click here, you download, and you end up downloading this PS3 update or updat.pop. And obviously, if you had a PS3, you stick that in the USB drive, put it into PS3, and do an update. But actually, we need this file to install it into the emulator. So once you have that, I've already got it, so you download it, come back to the emulator, and go to firmware, also install firmware. And now I do have this on my X drive under the demo folder, on the game's BIOS, and here it is. It's about 200 meg, so it's fairly big. Just select this, and now we'll go ahead and install this into the emulator for us. And that's gone full screen. There we go. So these PPUs, that modules, don't claim to be an expert, but I think they're basically they're patches for various things for the games to get them to work properly. And so when you first install the firmware, it will go through and build all these modules ready for the emulator to run. So I think this might take a couple of minutes just to do this. Obviously this depends on the speed of your system. It takes some processing power to do this. So I'm just going to pause here quickly and then resume once this is finished. Right, there we go, so that's finished. So that's the firmware installed. Now the next thing we can do is install a game. So I do have one ready here. It's under games and PS3. I have Afterburner. So basically, as it says in their guide, they support two versions of games, if you like. So back in there. So yeah, basically you can install games into here, or you can, or what they have. Sorry, so there's basically games in a disc format. So whether that's like an ISO type format, or ones that have been what they call dematerialized. So a game sort of the folder structure has been extracted into a folder, which is like the game I've got here. There is also a third option which I found does work, is that games that you download from the PlayStation Store come down as a package, and they come down as a .pkg file. So within the actual emulator you can come here and you can say install packages. So that would look for a package file for here, a pkg file. So sometimes you do get games in that format, and I've found that it's fine to actually do that and install them. So you basically find the package file, click here, click open, and it would install it, and it would appear in the list. So that's the kind of the third way of doing it. But like I say, the game I've got is in kind of what they call the dematerialized, the folder structure, the folder format. So this is basically the contents of what would be on the game disc in folder structure. So all we do is we come here and we go to add games, and I'll point it at that game I've got, and add it to the list. And then what you can probably, good idea to do is to try it in here, make sure it works properly before you go any further. Now on my PC I've got an Xbox One controller connected via Bluetooth. So one thing, just a one-off config in here really is to set up the pads. So change this to X input, and see if it's found one pad connected. That's my Xbox controller, and then in here I can test it. You can see just down the bottom right hand corner, if I move the left stick, that moves, and again the right stick, that moves here. I think when I click the buttons in here, nothing actually lights up. It's not like it shows you what's happening. But if I say the D-pad up, click here, click up, and it fills it in. So it's all kind of like pre-configured. So everything here you shouldn't need to change. Obviously, if you've got a different controller, you might need to, but it's worth just double checking that all the buttons are mapped how you expect them. And when you're happy with that, just click save. So that should be the controller set up. And now to try this, we can double click it. What I'm going to actually do, just go to config and turn off running full screen, because the video capture I'm using doesn't like it running full screen. So if I double click this now, I'm going to launch the game, and again these modules, so these are specific modules for this game. Again, this is a one-off thing. This happens the first time you run the game. I'll see how quick it's going to go. Decide whether I pause the video or not. It shouldn't take too long. You'll find some games have more, some games have less. But like I say, it's just a one-off thing. Just kind of have to wait and be patient the first time you run it. We're getting there now. So I won't pause, I'll just let this run. And again, like I say, this depends on the power of your system, how quickly it does this. So nearly there. fingers crossed, the game should run. Obviously, double check my controller as well, make sure that's working. Yeah, so you see that's running pretty well. You also might occasionally see in the bottom left hand corner, it's probably hard to see there, it says compiling shaders. So basically if it's trying to draw some objects on screen that it's not drawn before, it will compile the shaders. You can see here it's just filling stuff in, and again that's a one-time thing. Once it's got those shaders compiled, it stores them and it won't happen again. Yeah, so that's working, controller's working, all looking good. So I'll just close that. Didn't like being closed. So yeah, so that's basically the game added to the emulator and the game running. That's so good. So now the next step is to actually get it into RetroBat and into the menu. And the way they do this is basically create a playlist. So it gives you the guide here. So once you've got through the games installed within the emulator itself, you then use the BAT GUI executable, which I think I mentioned before. It's like a little additional app that comes with RetroBat that lets you sort of tweak and set up different bits and pieces. So we'll actually run through this bit here now to create a playlist. So, okay, yeah, that's because I broke it. So what I'll do, I'll just close out of here while we run this. And then, as you say, within the RetroBat folder, you've got the batgui.exe, and you can see here you've got the M3U creator, so it's going to create a little playlist of our games. See it says in here, so I'm going to click scan. So basically we're going to point it at the folder where the emulator is. So it should actually be looking in the right place already. So depends where you installed RetroBat 2, but I've got mine on the X drive and a demo, and it's looking under the emulators and our PC3 folder. So we'll click scan there. He says, and with any luck, make sure that's right. Demo RetroBat. So this is where the game should be installed. I mean, what I will double check, because what I've done is just add it directly from where it is. If we try this instead, point it where the actual game is. Yes, it's bit up that time. So yeah, so that's obviously picked up from the folder it's in. What you probably want to do is, rather than obviously, so this is running it from the original folder where I had it. What you probably want to do is put any games into the actual RetroBat folder to make it portable. So you can, I think I mentioned before, the RetroBat is designed to all run from a single folder, so you can put it onto a USB stick, you can move it between machines and run it wherever you want. So I would recommend in the ROMs folder you've got a whole folder structure here set up for all the different systems that RetroBat supports, and within here will be a PS3. So what I'd probably recommend doing is put your game folders in here and then add them to the emulator. Obviously I've added it straight from the games folder, which sits outside, so it's not an issue, but it's just if you want to keep everything together, I recommend putting your games in here. So anyway, so it's found the eboot.bin is what it looks for. So that's the actual kind of the file that the PS3 launches to launch the game. So you can actually then, if it doesn't auto detect, you can actually type in the name of the game. Afterburner. And then once you've got, also I've made in one game, you probably have multiple games. Once they're all in here and got the right name, click generate. I think that's pretty much it. So that's done. So if we now look in the, okay, so in under here, let's create this M3U. If we just open this with Notepad or whatever text editor you've got, just make this a bit smaller. So it's basically what the playlist file is. It's basically a text file with basically tells it where to look for it, look for the game. So it's going to look there for the file. So now we've got that inside there. This is a demo one they give you basically. So you could just do it manually and just type the text in here rather than using the Bat GUI to create that. You could just type it manually, but obviously Bat GUI is meant to make it a bit easier for you. So now we've got that playlist file in there just for that single game. In theory, we go back to RetroBat. Just bring that down into view. Now, in theory, we've got PS3. Go into here, we've got our Afterburner game. What I can do quickly is just... Oh, no, not that one. What I can do is hold down select on the game and go to scrape. Found it, we'll take that, thank you. So there we go, so it's added, so now we're just going to try and launch it. So this is a bit of a, I think with PS3 it's a bit of an error, I think, in the fact that by default RetroBat, when you try to launch any game, it will check you've got the right BARS file, which you can turn that option off if you want, but it's handy to have it on. So basically this is looking for that PSP or PS3 update.pup. But we don't actually need that in the BARS file because we've installed it in the emulator already, so we don't actually need to run the game, but it keeps saying you don't have it. So what you can do to just get rid of the error message is, so under my BIOS file, I've got the PSP update there. I'll just take a copy of that, go back to RetroBat BARS files. So here's where all the BARSes would go. I'll just paste that in there. Now, if I try to launch the game again, let's go back in, launch, and it doesn't complain, so it's kind of like it's looking for it, but it doesn't actually need it. So I've got a feeling this might, yeah, see, it's so because I've pointed it there, it's looking for Afterburner in the wrong place. This is because obviously it doesn't actually exist under the emulators folder. So just quit out of here for a second. So to fix this, it's kind of partly with the way I'm doing it. So if I go back to PS3, we'll edit this playlist. So this is why I do my videos kind of ad hoc rather than a sort of planned pre-scripted. So because it's starting with a backslash, so it's going to look for this folder under the emulators. But what we need to do is say, actually, this game's here. So this is the first part of the path to it. And pop that in there. So now it's telling it to look under this location for the game. So we just close this and click save. Now, in theory, launch that again. If like I say, those playlist files are literally just text files, so you can just manually edit them, just make sure they're pointing in the right place for your game. Let's go back here. Let's go to launch. And there we go. Obviously it did launch full screen. I've just hit Alt-Enter, change to windowed mode, and that's the game running. And there we go. And we just close that and we come back. So that's how to add PS3. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So yeah, there's not much more to it than that. Like I say, if you want to go in and tweak any settings in the emulator itself, change some graphics settings or sound settings, just go back to the RetroBat menu, go down and find the PS3 emulator, which is here, hit select to launch it, and now just launch it with no game running. So now we can go into things like the config, and we can change some settings in here if you really want to. You can change the resolution. The renderer from Vulkan should be the best one, and you can pick aspect ratio, anti-aliasing, all this kind of good stuff you can play with. I tend to leave the default, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here you can tweak and test. And the good thing is that you can test it here outside of RetroBat and just see if it works. And then once you're done, you just hit save. And also you can go back in here. If you want to add a second controller, you can come in here, and if you've got a second one connected. Obviously I don't. I only have the one, so I'll leave that as null. You can add in the emulation and test it and make sure the buttons are mapped. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I say, as you add games, they build up in a list here. Like I say, you can test them outside, make sure they're running, and then just basically create a playlist which points to the eatboo.bin file. As long as that's pointing in the right direction, then it will launch fine from within RetroBat. So yeah, that's how to do it. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully it made sense. I didn't ramble too much. So yeah, any feedback, let us know. And like I say, I'll make a few more of these videos on different systems. I had a few requests, so yeah, watch out for the next one. Thanks a lot. Cheers.